one of the things that sticks out to me as I reflect on that game were some decisions that I made as a head coach that I think could have changed the outcome of the game. And I think that just leaning on David a little bit more in terms of just run the ball. We're having success doing this. Eat clock. We got a 2-score game, 2-score lead, and I've got to accept responsibility for that. That being said, I think that our process of finding an identity on offense is an ongoing process, and I think that there's some things that stand out to me that maybe not the average fan would realize in terms of the progress that we've made and kind of some of the issues that we had to address in the offseason. One of our biggest priorities going into this offseason in both the high school and the portal recruiting world was we've got to be better on third downs on defense. We've got to find a way to affect the quarterback more consistently and get off the field. And the second thing was addressing some of the issues that we had on special teams last year. And that doesn't mean that there aren't, there's always going to be a lot of holes in the dike. And one of the things that probably we didn't hit on as much as we would have liked to was in the receiver room. And so we're kind of in the process of figuring that out. When you think about offensively, we lost our quarterback to the transfer portal. We lost 3 offensive linemen to the transfer portal. We lost our top 2 runners, and we graduated our top 2 receivers. So really, we essentially returned to 0 production on offense, okay? I think we've been productive on offense, but we haven't been consistently productive on offense. And I think it's going to take a minute for us to find that groove. And I feel like in spite of the fact that there's been some jankiness on that side of the ball, I do think we now know kind of who we need to be to win games. And I think that's a really important thing as we go into our last non-conference game, the bye, and then into Mountain West play. And so that being said, it was still a gut-wrenching loss. I mean, that's a hard one to take. That's one you should have gotten, and we're not going to get a do-over. And so we've got to prepare ourselves to go play a good Western Kentucky team on the road. I've never been to Bowling Green, Kentucky, but I know the history and tradition of that program. They're consistently at the top of Conference USA, all the way back to when Coach Harbaugh Sr. was leading that program to national championships at the FCS level. And so what I see on tape is, number one, I see an offensive-minded head coach and Coach Helton. They've gone out and they've kind of done what's a little bit in vogue in college football right now, which is they go get the cow-calf deal, hire the coordinator, bring the quarterback from Abilene Christian, prolific thrower at the FCS level, and the offense is dynamic. They have a lot of really talented, skilled players, not just number 7, the quarterback, Barry, but should know his name. It's the best name in college. Yeah, Maverick MacGyver, best name in college football. But the weapons that he has around him: 3 Barry, 0 Henry, 5 Mac, little gadget guy number 2, and then Parrish, the running back, which is really he's almost like another receiver for him on the field. The way they use them, they do a great job with tempo. They do a good job of getting edge numbers on the edge of the defense. And then they take a lot of vertical shots down the field. I mean, even on a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, you press them and they single up one of their guys, he's going to take that shot down the field, which is kind of similar to what we saw a little bit of last week against Middle Tennessee. Defensively, very active front 7. Probably their best interior defensive lineman is Machiavelli that played for us. And but they zip and zap a lot of movement post snap, decent amount of pressure on mixed downs. And so that'll be a challenge for us. They do vary their front looks, but they run well as a defense. They're a physical group. And special teams is an area where they're kind of a little bit of probably Coach Helton's mindset, a little bit more of a possession mindset. They're not overly aggressive in that phase, but they're very sound. They're not going to give you a whole lot, that's for sure. And I think that's kind of what I see from this group. Be an interesting trip, and excited to see somewhere in college football I haven't been. So looking forward to an opportunity to compete on Saturday. Happy to take any questions.
I know you've said kind of players bounce back quicker than coaches. I guess where is just the confidence level of the player group after the last couple of games?
Yeah, I think they feel like they can be a good team. That's kind of the message that I got from when I talked to the leadership council is like, hey, we know our defense is a pretty good defense, and our guys go up against each other every day. And even, the defensive guys were bringing that up, like, we know you guys are capable of this. And so it's about finding that rhythm and that confidence. And confidence comes from production. And so, putting the ball in the end zone is what's going to lead to that confidence, I think, to a large degree. And I think that us finding our formula for success, which is not going to look exactly like maybe what we had envisioned, But I think we're finding out who we can be to win games and what our formula will be. And every year and every game takes on a life of its own. And so I feel like their confidence level, defensively and special teams wise, I think they're a pretty confident group right now. Offensively, I think that, we've got to produce a little bit more for that confidence to gain.
And then quarterback, obviously, I guess where does that stand as you guys head into the week and get prepared for the?
Yeah, I know this, and you guys aren't privy to all the conversations that we have, but I made it clear when I had this conversation with AJ and Chubba on Sunday last week that here's kind of how I see this going. I think Chubba, you put too much on your plate. The weight of the world doesn't need to be on your shoulders. We can, modify some things, do some things here, but I think it's probably going to be better for us to get AJ rolling a little bit in the first half and get you going on your packages and then see where the game plays out. And so that was kind of the plan going into this game. And even in the 2-minute situation, that was kind of, Chubba's operated that more frequently than AJ has, and he did absolutely fabulous job operating that. We had 3 timeouts. There was only 21 seconds. We hit the chunk play. We had church it, like textbook how you operate it, pump the timeout, get up, nothing there, get us 9 yards, pump the timeout, give us a chance to win the game with a field goal. And I think that was maybe a confidence builder for Chubba going into this thing. And so, I think that's kind of who we're going to be for a while is, hey, how's Chubba playing? How's his psyche? I want to be protective of that because I see him as our long-term answer, and that's why he was named the starter at the beginning of the year. But AJ's got to have a role, and so does Carter. Carter brings some things to the table too. And so part of us finding out who we are and what our identity is leaning into the strengths of those quarterbacks. And when you don't have a veteran quarterback at that position, even though those guys are older, they haven't played a ton of football, it takes a while for those guys to find their rhythm.
So do you envision playing multiple quarterbacks in this game just to continue to sort things out, or?
I think that remains to be seen. I think the game plan dictates a lot of that. And I think you'll see multiple quarterbacks in pretty much every game we play this year. Let me put it that way.
What do you envision as Carter's role? I know he got out there for a couple of potential
That was kind
plays.
of decoy stuff, get him out there. And I want to see the kid do some stuff, We got 4 games to play him, and I want to see him play. I think he's dynamic, and he shows the ability to move the offense when we're in, scout team periods and service periods. And I think it's going to be beneficial for him and our program in the long run for him to get some run.
Do you envision playing him over the 4, or you just want to keep him at the 4? I guess
remains to be seen.
Yeah. What is the identity of the offense in your eyes, and how has that changed from maybe what you guys thought it was going to be entering the season?
Well, I thought we were probably going to be a little bit more open sets. And one of the strengths of our offense is our 2 tight ends. And that's kind of emerged, right? You think Jet's going to be a good player. Jace is coming off an injury. And then the more those 2 guys play together, the more you realize, hey, these 2 guys probably need to be on the field. And so that kind of changes a little bit of what our thought process is there. I think that Chubba's legs are definitely one of our bigger assets. And I think our running back room has started to really show what they can do. And so I think, and here's the other thing I'm going to tell you. Our offensive line is more physical than I thought they were going to be. I think that's been a real positive for us. They're gelling. There were some protection things in this game that were not right. There was a couple of, communication things up front that, created some negative plays for us. But when those guys are playing 5 as 1, that they're doing a really good job of controlling the line of scrimmage and even in pass protection. And so I think that's an improvement over a year ago. And I think that's one of the things that I've been really pleased with. And I think that can continue to be who we are. This is, it's going to be gritty and it's going to be tough, and we've got to win time of possession, and we've got to not turn the ball over, and we've got to put the ball in the end zone and then lean into our strengths in the kicking game. We had obviously we missed a couple of kicks. That's a bummer, but when they gave us a pitch to hit, we hit it, and I thought that was impressive. Our coverage units were dominant. Bailey is a weapon as a punter. I feel like that's a phase that's going to be a strength for us as we get into Mountain West play.
You mentioned the offensive line. I did want to ask about Jack Foster. We're going to do a feature on him. I guess, what have you learned about him through the first 3 games?
I think the immediate things that come to mind about Jack, phenomenal teammate, one of the hardest workers in the program, and has authentic leadership ability. And I think those 3 things make him a guy that we can lean on as the year goes on and as his career goes on. I think he loves ball. He's inquisitive, soaks up information, is in here all the time watching extra tape. works his tail off in the weight room. Like I said, he's an authentic, like he builds relationships and then leans into those relationships to lead, which I think is very mature on his part. And so, he's been a phenomenal asset for us.
What was the process of getting him? Because obviously Coach Eck went to New Mexico. He could have went with him, went to a different Mountain West school.
Well, I think, that's probably one of the things about the portal that is a positive thing for kids. Not every environment is going to fit that individual. And I think Jack was a guy that wanted to maybe be coached a little bit different. And I think that was probably one of the things that led to him choosing Nevada.
And then looking at his relative newness to football, I guess, what is the potential and ceiling for him? I guess, what do you see in his potential future, given that he's only played for like 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, probably was a hooper growing up with that long, lean body. And I just think, I think he's got the ability to be an all-conference type of player. I mean, I think he's got he's a better athlete than you think. He knows what his deficiencies are, and he works on them constantly in terms of hip and ankle flexion and mobility, high football IQ. I mean, I think, and again, like I said, he's got that leadership ability, which is, if your best leaders and your toughest guys are on your O-line, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of football games. And if they're not, you're probably not going to be very good. And so I'm excited to see the mindset that is being developed in that room, where lean on us, we'll get it done. And I referenced it earlier in the week. I said Middle Tennessee's front seven is real. Like, those 2 interior D linemen are good players. And I was pleased with the way we performed against that group. And we'll be tested again this week.
I mean, looking at Western Kentucky's offense, it looks like they want to throw. I guess, how would you assess how your secondary, which has a bunch of new players, has performed thus far, and maybe the challenge and more knowledge you'll get about them playing a team that's going to throw it as often as Western Kentucky?
Yeah, I think at least last week they were the number 7 passing offense in the country. They play with a lot of pace, and as I referenced earlier, they have a ton of weapons. I think that, I thought one was a really good 50-50 ball guy for Middle Tennessee. I think these 2 guys, 3 and 0, are more polished. They have a little bit better body control. This quarterback is a different type of player than 11 was for Middle. They both throw really good deep balls, though, and that's something that we're going to have to defend multiple times. We can't just let them dink and dunk us down the field. We're going to have to challenge these guys at times, and we know when we show press, it's coming. And so we've got to respond, and I think there's been some guys that have stepped up. I mean, I think, Ed and AJ are experienced players that are really quality players in the back end. Aiden Walker is a freshman that just keeps showing up all the time. And, the experience in the back end with Hayden McDonald at one of the safeties and Merv at the other, and then you blend in Bishop. Even though it's a lot of new faces, those guys have started to come together and gel pretty well.
I mean, you mentioned some of the play calling on offense. On the game-winning touchdown, you guys brought 6. I guess just walk us through the decision to do that and try and bring some pressure and create a negative play.
We were dying a slow death. And if we fit that 0 pressure correctly, it's a sack. We had 2 guys running the C gap. There's got to be a contained player when you're bringing that many guys. And it was, simply do your job, and that's a dead play. And so I thought it was the right call. I actually was the one that said we need to go Allen here. We played too much zone in this drive. Let's go get him. And, hey, it is what it is. Goal line defense is, try to say this in an appropriate way, it's either hero or goat. That's kind of what goal line defense is, right? You're either going to make the play or you're probably going to bust it, because you got to take some chances down there. And unfortunately, we didn't fit the pressure correctly, and that guy did what he did. He knew he couldn't beat us with his arm down the stretch. And he kind of wore us out with all the max effort pass rushes that we had to do. We didn't counter quite as well as we would like to. We missed some open field tackles. But he, 4-year starter, he put the thing on his shoulders and he took it,
What's been the message to your quarterbacks? I mean, Chuba in particular, you probably didn't envision the early season playing out like this, and you've kind of mentioned his psyche a couple of times.
I think my message has been very consistent with not just our quarterbacks, but everybody, which is, in the moment, we're going to do what we feel like gives us the best opportunity to win. And it's not personal. It's about the team and the organization as a whole. And I think that we got to find our rhythm. And sometimes it's going to, like I said, you've got this many new pieces and a new coordinator. It's going to take a minute to get things to gel a little bit. And I think we've got to lean into our strengths right now and continue to develop some threats on the edge of our offense. and mix and match a little bit. Find out, hey, who are our best stem runners? Who are our best take runners? Who's going to run the climb route the best? And probably be more personnel oriented in some of those areas.
Going out on the road, I mean, do you feel like that's a good thing for the team? Get away from, Reno for a little bit? And
yeah, I mean, I'd prefer to be home anytime I can. I think one of the things I want to look into as we evolve into whatever this, the configuration of the new conference that we're in is, I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense for us to travel to places like Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Murfreesboro, Tennessee for non-conference Group of 5 games. I think we've got to look a little bit more regionally. I would say the same thing for us in terms of the money games, the buy games that we've got to play. It's awesome to be able to go to a place like Penn State. It's awesome to be able to go to a place like Ohio State, but USC and UCLA make a heck of a lot more sense. Utah, BYU, et cetera. And so I think that my scheduling philosophies, and Stephanie and I are in sync on that in terms of, I understand how we have to structure our schedule, but I think that we've got to be more selective about, there's a cost that's not minimal to go to these places. And every penny that we save on travel, on equipment, on coaching salaries, whatever it is, that's more money I have to go get better players. And that's what I would like to have, is better players at the end of the day. And so that's an economic decision that all of us in college athletics have to think about now.
When you look at Western Kentucky, I guess what are going to be the keys in your mind to be able to make this another 4-quarter game and potentially come out with the win?
I think it's kind of our formula, right? We've got to be able to run the ball, control the time of possession, which was a huge factor in the fourth quarter in that game on Saturday. I think we've got to limit the explosives. I think we've got to make them earn it. They really thrive on, get out of position, miss a tackle, get a chunk play, go fast, throw the deep ball, 2-move routes, screen and go, double passes, things like that create momentum for them. That's really what they thrive on. And so we've got to play with great eyes, keep the ball in front of us, make them drive it 12 or 13 plays, and then play elite red zone defense, because they're going to get their yards from 20 to 20. That's just the nature of what they do, but we've got to play elite red zone defense.
I guess, has the start of the season surprised you at all? I mean, did you feel like the opening of the second year would be a little bit more cohesive, or maybe not just based on the roster
like I said,
turnover?
I kind of talked about that. Like, we're in the middle of a roster flip, right? We got 64 new guys on this roster, and I know that probably isn't really well documented, but this is not the finished product. We're still, I think one of the things that was a hugely important thing for us was we signed a really good high school class. And what that did was elevate the bottom of our roster. And so when you elevate the bottom of the roster, obviously it's going to start to push everybody on the upper end. And that's something that I feel like we did a good job of. I think we addressed, as I mentioned earlier, some really glaring deficiencies on defense and in the kicking game. We elevated the bottom of our roster to say, hey, we're going to be able to fix all our problems in one recruiting cycle. I don't know that that's realistic, but I feel like we have the pieces. We went out and got some talented backs. They're just young. We have talented quarterbacks. We just got to find what they do well, right? And the physicality we're playing with on the offensive line, the combination of Jet and Chase at tight end, Jordan Brown on the outside, Marcus in the slot. I can start to see how this is coming together, but you don't really know that. And one of the things that happens is people say, well, didn't you have all offseason to do this? No, I had from June 1st on. That's when I had my team. So, you have the month of June where you can do some work with the guys a couple hours a week, and then you have fall camp in August. And I think this is probably what Group of 5 football is starting to become, which is if you can hold on to your roster, you're going to have a chance to be pretty good at the beginning of the season. And if you've got to flip your roster, it's going to take you a while to kind of find your rhythm, because these guys just haven't played a lot of football together. Even if they played football somewhere else, it hasn't been as a cohesive unit.
When you look at those young guys, is there like a blending of them getting more playing time in the near future, or is it, like you said, you're going to put the best people out there who can win the game today?
Yeah, so there's a couple of guys, like, in the backfield, obviously you see Herschel getting his run, and Caleb, they've kind of established themselves as kind of the 1-2 punch. But there's two guys behind him that are true freshmen that flash every day. One of them got nicked up a little bit in fall camp, and Dom Kelly, and the other one's Carter Jackson, the kid from Folsom. And I think those guys are going to have to play for us as the year goes on, because that's a volatile position. And I like how we're bringing them along, I think, appropriately there. I think there's, a couple slots, and Matt Kumpf and Zedekiah Ambrosio that are kind of Marcus Bellin 2.0 guys that show up every day in practice. Well, if Marcus gets nicked a little bit, we start to have some confidence in them. And I think that's DJ Asiasi at tight end is chasing on the heels of those two elite veteran players, and there's a lot of those guys on offense. I think Whoopty's going to start to see some playing time at wide receiver. We have young talent. They're just, some of them aren't quite ready for prime time, and we've got to be able to get them in the game and get them going a little bit. I could say the same thing on defense. I mean, Jake Silverman's a linebacker that's been playing a bunch for us on special teams and made a handful of plays. Really instinctual kid. Isaiah Jordan, a Sacramento kid, man, this guy's a physical freak, and he's starting to come along. I mentioned Aiden Walker. There's some. We did a good job in this high school cycle, and we need to stack another group like that.
You mentioned special teams. I guess Chris Smalley seems like he's making a lot of plays on special teams. I know, he's played a lot of different roles on this team over the last couple of years. I guess what's been his impact on special teams?
I think his impact on the program. I mean, you talk about a team guy. What do you need me to do? Play DN, play linebacker, play tight end, run down on kickoff, play gunner on punt, whatever it is. And whatever he does, he literally empties the tank. And, I mean, that guy hit almost 22 miles an hour on Saturday. That's pretty impressive, running down on kickoffs and punts. And, the edge that he brings to those units. I mean, he's kind of our de facto special teams captain, right? In fact, he's going to be our 41 this week. And so I think that's says a lot about what his teammates think about him.
Yeah, I'm not sure we asked you about that. I guess how did that idea come about to honor Marion in that way?
Yeah, well, okay. It was probably one of the first couple months I was here, and I'd taken a walk down to Manzanita Lake and Morrill Hall, and I'm walking back up, and I'm looking at the banners, and like, not just on this end of campus, but you're like, this is pretty impressive to see some of the alums that we have here. And then I'm like, Marion Motley, he played at Nevada, and it was like, that's crazy. He's wearing this jersey number 41. And I start thinking, like, you know what? I bet a lot of people don't know that he played at Nevada. And so, you start digging in on, how he got here and some of the things that he had to endure, not just here, but also when he went to the NFL as being one of the first 3 or 4 African Americans to play in that league. Think about courage, you think about perseverance, think about toughness. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what we want this place to be about. And so we, let that thing grow a little bit. And Aaron was able to reach out to his grandson and make sure that he was okay with us honoring his grandfather and in that way. His jersey's retired here, but nobody's going to have that permanently. It's just we're honoring that legacy.
So last non-conference game, I guess, what do you need to see in this game to make sure that you guys are ready for Mountain West play and the rigors that's going to bring?
Yeah, I think this is kind of that last opportunity for us to say, okay, hey, the experiment is over. This is who we've got to become on offense so that we can keep going. I'm curious to see how we hold up against the tempo that we're going to see from Western Kentucky and these elite wide receivers on the perimeter, because we're going to face some of those types of talented players in the Mountain West Conference. And then going into a tough road environment is always an opportunity to kind of steel yourself as a team too. So I'm excited about going and playing a really good opponent on the road. And then, we'll be ready for a bye. And I do think that, I watch a decent amount of Mountain West football each week. And I do think that there's a lot more parity in this league than there has been in a couple of years. And so I think it'll be an exciting Mountain West Conference race.